Okay, so it's 2 minutes past the hour, so let's begin. So before we sort of dig in, just to note these prep steps that are on screen, this is as a practical session. So if you'd like to follow along with what we're doing today, then you can do. These are the things you'll need. So you'll need SCOM deployment, obviously. You'll need a Linux system that you can fiddle with and a connection to it using something like PuTTY, so an SSH session. And ideally, but not critically, the latest SCOM 2019 UR3 Linux and Unix MPs. So with those in mind, the only other thing to say is join us on Slack where you can ask any questions. And today we're here to talk about authoring management packs and monitoring Linux and Unix using Fragments, which is a great place to dig in. So if you go next. Just to say, we're going to be taking questions primarily at the end of the session, but feel free to send them in at any point during either the GoToWebinar chat and Q&A functionality or via Slack. You should have had the link that's on screen in your email. The good thing about going via Slack is if we don't get time to get to your question during the webinar or it comes to mind later down the line, you're free to ask at any point. All right. So without further ado, just to introduce myself. So I'm Bruce Cullen. I'm the Director of Products at Cookdown. Cookdown and Squared Up jointly put on Scomathon and these coffee breaks. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce today's first guest. Christian, welcome.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Bruce, for the introduction. My name is Christian Heitkamp. I'm going to run most of the session today. I'm responsible at NICE for the product management, and I'm really happy to show you a bit of our tricks and tips around Linux authoring. And with me is my colleague, Nikolai.
Nikolai.
Hi. I'm going to also present one demo, and we'll see you later.
Thank you very much. It's great to have you both with us today. I get an easy ride today. Essentially, I have a little bit of introduction to do, and then it's pretty much handing over to Christian. So I'm really grateful for you guys to be with me today. So if you could go next, we'll dig in. So why are we talking about Linux monitoring and in particular authoring? Because there are management packs that exist you can simply consume that will let you monitor Linux. The sort of input for this has come from sort of two places. So the first place is this, which is the Big SCOM survey. It's a survey that we as Scomathon ran back in January, I think it was now. And one of the questions was, what do you use SCOM to monitor? If you could click, Christian, one of the points here is Linux servers. Great. So with what's out there and is sort of freely available or you can buy, Linux servers are covered was what we initially thought. But then over the sort of coffee break webinars that we do, we've been getting quite a few questions coming via the Q&A about authoring and monitoring Linux. So clearly there's some deficiency or something you can do above what you can simply get from Microsoft. And that's a great place to sort of start. And the second point, Christian, if you will move on, is a bunch of stats from Microsoft, which I would sort of hand over to you to talk about, Christian.
Okay, right. Just before we go into that, we have prepared some polls because basically, well, we have given an introduction, you know us now, but we would like to understand a bit our audience a bit better, that we can actually run the next hour as most efficient as possible. So, Bruce, if you could just run the first poll, please. And this is really for us to understand a bit and like where you come from an MP authoring skill level, because like obviously there are different levels we can enter. We will have demos for most parts. So maybe not the guru part, but we touched a bit on it. So, but just to get a bit of understanding where you are. So we'll just please fill out the survey here. So basic means basically here what you see. It's really like if you have open Visual Studio with the Visual Studio authoring extension, VSAE, and build a management pack, or if you have MP Author in the past, so which also uses Fragments, and then obviously the advanced is like if you build stuff from scratch and so on. So Bruce, whenever you feel that it's kind of complete, like then we can actually share the results back to you so that you can actually see where we are, and get a bit of information also that you see what the audience has a background.
Indeed, makes sense. I'm going to give it just a few more minutes. We have 67% of people voted, very precise, which is good. And I'm also hoping to learn something from today, because I fit into the kind of basic category myself. Certainly not advanced or a guru, certainly not a guru. And I know that between the two of you have a lot more knowledge in this area than I do. So that's 70% of people voted. So I'm going to close the poll there and share the results.
Okay, we've got a few viewers on here. Cool. That's great. So we got a good mixture actually between about 2/3 are in the first two categories. So we got a bit of advanced. So advanced will be Nikolai's part later, and the first one too. So that's perfect, because 2/3 of the session will be beginners and basic, and then we go in the advanced later. For the gurus, obviously, we might want to schedule a second session eventually later, but I hope also those learn something. Great.
It's good to have those gurus on the call. Feel free to contribute via the chat and the Q&A if there's extra nuggets of gold that you guys can add.
Yeah, sure. Well, the next part is actually Linux. So we also want to know what you know about Linux. So sorry, one more poll for you. So Bruce, maybe you may want to run the second poll. So obviously this is focused on Linux, the Unix part with AIX and Solaris, the HPX. I'll keep that a bit aside. It's really around Linux here.
Another one where we were joking before we started this session about sort of our unique areas of expertise, and I was saying that my own area of expertise is very far away from Linux and Unix. To me, it's a nice box with lots of question marks written on it. So I very much fit into the not very familiar with it category. So again, I'm sure there's absolutely tons that you guys can teach me today, which is great. We're just going to give it a little bit longer. We have 70%.
Sure. Maybe I can challenge this a bit. Like, let's say if you get 60%, I'm going to share my camera.
Well, okay. So at the moment we're at 73%. So I think it's camera on time, Christian.
Okay, good. Because okay, cool. And let's share it back. So the results. Okay, good. We got some advanced here, so that looks really good. So and we'll get some Linux Dev Pros as well on here. Cool, but that's perfect. So let me quickly share and just quickly say hi on the camera and stop it again, because I just got a little screen in the back up here. Let's see if the camera goes on. All right. I would just want to present you this and say hi to you. I'm a real person. There's not a robot speaking to you today. So thanks for joining.
In the same spirit, I'm a real person.
Great. Okay, cool. Let's get started here now after the introduction, and we'll dive right into. So obviously, I like these architecture slides. Just start a bit talking about where we're going to go. So obviously, I assume all are very familiar with SCOM. I don't need to touch on that. We have on the right side the Linux server, and on the Linux server we have the agent deployed. So this is the SCX or now OMI agent. There's an OMS agent. There are various components of it. In the end, they're all servers. We call them OMI server, and then there are provider classes, which are various classes who add additional information to that. They have a kind of a plug-in concept. So we actually have the memory information, disk information, and these providers can be traced separately. They're added to that. And there's also something called an SCX provider. It's been around quite a while now. And there's a class for log files. And this log file class is basically in here to actually start the SCX log file reader. All of you who have actually deployed an agent and did some sudoers configuration are familiar with it, because you have to give it additional privileges to actually also read log files that are only readable from a super user perspective. Obviously, if you don't do that, it will still work, but eventually not all log files can be read, and then you have the log file. So that's basically the setting where we're going to start. And right now, we'll actually start and author like a small management pack with you and show what's available in SCOM 2019. You are free, and you might follow along if you like. And then we actually go a bit further and talk a bit about the pros and cons in a second part. So actually, let me go to my demo system here. So So obviously, maybe I just start a bit here. So we have like a Linux systems here. This is my Linux system, all green and fine. It's a Red Hat system, but doesn't really matter at this point. And then we can actually like start like for this Linux system. I'm just logging into the putty session. So I did the preparation already. So I'm not logging into root user. This is typically good practice not to use the root user. So you can use the operation ops user. That is the user that you defined under your run as accounts when you set this up. And we'll get to that bit later. And there will be a log file. And the log file is, I place this on temp. So this is an application log. Let's say that can be anywhere, but we have an application log and we just want to monitor what goes into this application log file. And we really start very basic because we are not starting yet with Visual Studio. We do that in the second step. So we'll actually go into the authoring console. In the authoring console, obviously, you can do for Linux Unix computer, create like a new monitor that's been added here, and it's quite easy. So you can try this right now. So if you go to monitor, create a new monitor, and then go to scripting, and in the generic scripting, you can actually go to a 2-state or 3-state monitor. If you click on this and you see a pop-up coming with an arrow, you need a patch. You have SCOM 2019 and not URL free. So just like in case you see that, then you need to patch your system because that was a known issue in the UR1 and UR2, but not got resolved now. Just want to point that out. But we're not going to do script monitoring at this point. We're actually monitoring log files. So we just go back up here, and there's a neat wizard now here. So you can actually open the wizard and pick log file monitoring. So and just go next, and we just say like application log monitor, or actually like log alert rule. I'll just create an alert rule actually in the end. So I created already a management pack where I can save that in there. So it should be I create this UI log monitor because I'm creating that via the user interface here, the UI pages. And in the next wizard step, I actually can go in here and say, well, I picked the system right over here. Actually add it. Okay, next setting is the log file path. So we can actually say temp, and just to make sure we'll got that right. So it's like here in temp. We've got the application log. So we're just going here to the application log and say application.log. Okay, the next thing is actually quite neat, and it's a regular expressions, and you can actually use regular expressions to filter for that log. So let's see what we have in that log. So it's a kind of a dummy log. So there's just error and error 2. So let's say our applications writes an error 22, like 12 in there. And we just like put it into that, just check if it's in there. Yeah, it's in there. So we just want to alert basically if there's something with an arrow in there. So we basically would use in a regular expression, say arrow, and make a dot here to actually use a wildcard in the end as a regular expression. And then like we can say like we have an arrow 12 and like test, and we say yes, match found. This is the test log for expressions, or regex tester for the regular expression, which is really helpful here. All right, so we'll just have done that. So we'll actually go next, and that's basically it. So it's really easy. I tell you starting easy. So this is it. So and just go create. So and then it will actually create it, and it will be saved in the management pack. The management pack is going to be deployed to your management group. It gets activated in your agents. The agents which are responsible basically for handling the Linux agent. You go back up now here to the monitoring console. Should be fairly fast. Let's hope that's today also the case here. Just going here, looking here for our monitor, and well, actually this is an alert rule. We should have that in alert rule. So it will actually run, and then it should create an alert in here if we add an additional line. So you might wonder, how long does it take, right? So how long does it take? So I'll just actually add another one. So, but when we actually go to the authoring back and say we haven't seen actually a setting to set this up. So so here we actually see it, and we can actually go to properties and say configuration and go to edit. but we've got nowhere the chance. You see, this is basically what we configured, but we got no chance of doing a changes to the interval. So also here, no changes to the interval possible. So actually, this is hard coded in there, and we can't change it. So it's 5 minutes per default. So actually, we're gonna have to go into wait. So before we're going to wait 5 minutes now here on the session, I'm actually leaving it. So, and then you should see later seeing this alert when you come back here. All right. Cool. So that's this part. So we'll let it sit and see when this comes back. Okay, good.
Just while you're transitioning, I had a hopefully probably stupid question, but let's see.
Sure, please.
So you mentioned using regular expressions to in your monitoring essentially. Have you got any tips on where somebody might go to find all of the possible regular expressions that you can use there?
Well, I'd say Google is your friend, but there's a big importance. There's a regular expressions for Linux and for .NET. So the big questions now, if you put it into a .NET dialog, which is it, do you need to use .NET regular expressions or Linux regular expressions? And that's actually not easy to answer because it depends where the regular expression is evaluated. And that depends again on the cookdown. Like, let's say you have various regular expressions on the same log file. So does it get evaluated in the .NET part, so here in the WinRM library, or does it get evaluated on the Linux part, which be then the Linux regular expression?
Yeah.
Well, to resolve that question, it's actually you have to enter Linux or Unix regular expression into the .NET dialog, which obviously you have to be clear about. So if you look for that, just make sure you're using the regular expression that are applicable for Linux and Unix.
Thank you. Perfect. That was one of my own questions. By the way, if anyone out there has any of their own questions, feel free to put them in the chat and the Q&A. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Let's go on. So, all right, let's go to that was the first demo. Let's go to the second. The second demo is we'll use the script part now. So we do log monitoring. So that's the first part. Now we actually want to do some script monitoring. And in this case, our use case will be to monitor a status file. So I'll actually show you this for the status file. What we're going to do, let me go back to my system. So in the status file is in, our temp. And we have a status info file. So in the status info file is in here, and then application writes in status information in there, and actually would like to say if the application's the status that's written in there is 0, we would like to have an alert. If it's 1, everything is good. Basically, that's it. And we will again want to start there where everybody can follow. So there is an option you can do that via the authoring console as well, but actually this is about Fragments. So Bruce, who's the king about Fragments, and everybody, I think about SCOM, who's doing a lot of things with SCOM and Fragments and authoring?
There's only one, and that's going to be the old Kevin Holman.
Exactly. So we'll do Kevin Holman for you. So, right. By the way, we didn't prepare this question, so I wasn't sure if we get this right. But I know Bruce and we did already a lot of sessions, so I can rely on you. Cool.
Allow me to say something. Whether it's the right answer is a different question.
Perfect. So, for all who want to follow along, you might be familiar with the Kevin Holman fragments, and I decided to use those because they're on GitHub, and you can take them. You eventually have them already, so you're quite familiar with those. So, and this way, I didn't have to publish some additional ones. So, and we'll actually take the fragments that are published by Kevin Holman, and since this demo is a bit longer, actually, I pre-recorded this. I'll actually talk to it, so I've got a bit more time. So. In Visual Studio, you can just create a new project and just actually, if you use, this is Visual Studio 2019, so I actually go and after you install the Visual Studio authoring extension, you pick your management pack and then pick your place where I create a folder for the coffee break, and now going in there and actually add the name for the project. So in this case, I'm looking for status monitor, so the application status, as I showed you before, so we're looking for the status monitor. All right, so now it actually goes out and creates that management pack. And the first thing I typically do is I do build. You may be laughing, saying, yeah, sure, that must be work, but I'm already like to build frequently, because as you know, if there's a problem, it's going to be hard to find. So I frequently build. So I actually, in the next steps, I also set this up to actually deploy now to my management group, so that I can actually easily deploy and change things. So I deploy this to my default management group here. So say, let's give it a good try, see if it works. No, I haven't set the default server, so I'll just actually set this as a default server. You might have a number of them, so let's try again. So that W100 is my default management group, and I need to authenticate here. Let's do that. Okay.
Just while you're logging in your demo here, which version of .NET should be selected? Which would you recommend?
Yeah, well, it depends a bit on the SCOM version you have, you know, and even more the Windows Server version. So let me actually just, I'll talk to that question a bit later, because I'm just going to continue here. So right, okay, so I'm just adding actually here now. So this is the fragment part. So in here we have you see, this is part of the fragment library. It's called the monitor Unix shell command. It's actually one of the few that have Unix in the name. So we picked that, and actually I copied them typically over to my own repository for that and added to this here. So, and well, I've got that fragment. So, and it's better to actually do it this way than to do copy and paste like into an empty fragment, because something might go wrong. So, and you will see in a moment that there things can go wrong. So I'll just add this here now. So, so we've got the fragment in here for the Unix shell command, and well, actually, you see it here. It might be familiar if you're using other fragments from Kevin Holman before. So you have to search and replace a couple of items in here. So, and so you have to display strings at the bottom, and here at the top, we're actually going to start and replacing now the company ID. With the company ID, I typically, well, in this case, I take the Contoso as usual. So, and as this is a demo, I'm not going to reveal any super private customer information here. So for the app name, it is more like you can actually go in here and say app name and use the Linux application. Oh, just from this tab. Do that again. So the app name again. Okay. And paste it in here. Okay. All right. So we've got all the replacements done. The class ID. The class ID is the target. So the target which class you're targeting. And in this case, I just like to target the Unix computer. And the Unix computer I'm targeting is the computer you actually have already discovered. So I'm not actually going and discover a separate class. There is the option, obviously, you can go and make a file discovery or some type of other discovery, and but I'm just using the standard class. So adding that one as well. So the unique ID, you can omit that, but as it's in here, I'm just going to use this as an example here using the app 123. I'll just replace that as well. Right, good. All right, so what's next? Well, the command, obviously. So for the command is, we have the status file. So actually, we want to take something out of the status file. There are a couple of options you can do that. You can use grep, if you're familiar with it. You can cat out this if there's typically one line in there. Cat is a bit dangerous if this is a growing file, because a lot of data might come and go back. But let's quickly check if I got this right. Because I just don't remember where the status, I put the status file here. So let me get my putty here. Say putty. This is so nice, Bruce. Putty. So I say putty. I hope that's also fine.
One of those things I never thought I'd be talking about today, but there we are.
Yeah, here we go. So the status file, I didn't put it in logs. Let me just check on the other side. So where did I put it? I think I put it in var. I think I put it in var temp. No, there's that in temp is the application, which that was the one we earlier monitored. Let me just check. I think it was var temp. that's sometimes why you write a specification when you got, yeah, there it is, and status info. So let's put it back up here. So let's correct it in here. So I do some bit of errors. Everybody who is following along has some time to actually do that as well. So we have this, and now do replace. We've got all of that in here. So now what is missing is actually that we need to resolve some references. Here on the right side, you see we don't have all the references. And actually here in this fragment, Kevin Holman does a really good job and put that in here. So we have the health management pack we reference, but we need to add the Microsoft Unix library management pack. And what I actually do, I have in my repos directory, I have a reference directory where I place all the references in here. So find it, there it is. So, and then I can actually pick it from there. Again, you want to take care of the versions you put in here. So you see I have a rather newer version here. They actually get updated. Also, they got updated with UR3, which was 2 weeks ago. And then sometimes you have MPs like the one we did just now, the Unix library, but the shell script command library is actually one that is an MPB, a management pack bundle. So we're going to add that as well. Double check that the reference are correct. So MUL and MUSL. So these are the defaults. But if you have that pre-selected already, then yeah, that might not be applicable. So we process the standard output. So if it's 1, it's here the error expression. So and then we have the healthy expression as well. So let's do a quick check. Yeah, I like to, when I use the command, I actually like to go to the command line just to double check that this is working. So, and yeah, I'll get the status back. Close that again, and let's double check these values here. So, and yes, we are good. We should change the interval because here this is running every 15 minutes. Again, Bruce and I could do a lot of talking in 15 minutes until the alert comes there, but I prefer to put this to 60 seconds now in order not to wait so long.
Makes for better demo.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, now let's see if it builds. Let's see who paid attention because there are some problems in there. And so it is quite hard actually to find sometimes the problems that are in there. So and here actually I just making this a bit bigger. So we actually see that there's a cryptic error sometimes. So specify, so that it actually says that there's a problem. Cannot find the management pack element Microsoft.Unix computer. It's like, well, that we have that is there, right? But actually, I did a typo, and it's lowercase Unix, right? So, and this is one of the things you might run in which are really difficult to find. So, let's try now to build again. There's going to be another one which is quite common. So I'm trying to take a bit the regular problems you might run in here, and this has to do with the host references. So here we have the and I frequently have colleagues from me coming to me like, Christian, I've got the wrong host reference number, and there can be more hosts, but it depends on your health model. And as we have changed well, we don't have our own target. We have used the standard Linux Unix computer. We actually don't need a host reference which reference up like one layer to a class on which we do the discovery, so we can actually remove that host reference here. And if we do, because here like we accessing the principal name of the Linux computer, that was a bit fast. So and then now it should be fine after we corrected that. And sometimes it's a bit of trial and error, I have to admit, unless you completely understand the health model behind that. All right, let's see if it builds now.
Has to be said, the whole case sensitivity thing is one that's tripped me up so many times, and it always takes much longer than it should to troubleshoot.
Oh yeah, especially if you're in a Windows editor, you would not guess you have a problem with case sensitivity. But, yeah, as I'm not sure where it's come from. Okay, great. So it actually deployed now. So to my management group. Let's go and check. So I call it like application, Linux application. So we have the Linux application status monitoring here. So and let's go to monitoring and let's go and see. So actually, let's go up here. So go here and look at the go here. So it should show up, and yeah, right there it is. The monitor we created. So we remember we replaced Contoso here and added all the other things. So it is in here. And obviously it's not activated yet. That typically takes a short moment. And I'll actually go back and go to the status file and actually write like a echo 0 to the status file. And I'm doing this here, and you might see permission denied, which is it's you know, this is quite typical because the application here writes not as root into the file. And so, and I'm an ops user, so I cannot modify that. So actually, I see that the permissions here are read only for me. So actually, I have to change the permission via the sudoers command and give like, well, you wouldn't do that on a regular application, right? Because your application owner might get angry at you if you do that. So, but in that case, you could actually change to run this as a privileged account. But in this case, I did it this way. So, okay. All right, so we can actually look now here at the properties. And if this again fails, this is one of the things that failed and might be something that is a problem. So, then you might really want to consider to update your version. I'm showing you a little trick now actually here that one of the big problems is sometimes that when you create a Unix management pack that you actually don't know if it works or not. Obviously, if it creates an alert, it will work, but how do you actually know that this command is executed if everything stays green? So this is the trick I'm using. I'm using a pipe and the T command and pipe the output to a trace file. At the same time, it will actually also return. So T will actually return the standard out and the standard arrow and put the standard out also into the separate file in there. So this way I can actually, I'm actually running this command. So I'll actually see it brings back the 0. And I can look at now a trace file here. And actually it also, trace file is created. I can look at it. It also writes 0 in there. So when on the timestamp of the file, I actually can always see when the monitor executes. So actually see, obviously the file is growing. So it actually adds to that. And with that, it actually goes. And the 0 is in there. So we get the alert right now in here. So you have the state change alert. So, and we can actually see it return the 0 standard out and actually brings us back up here. All right. So obviously you could go, as this is an unsealed management pack, you can actually modify this from here. But actually in that case, I just want to do a few more things on the in the Visual Studio to show like the real power when you use Visual Studio with the authoring extension, because it actually, you can really like, if you do some changes in here, like let's say, for example, we can do the interval changes and you can deploy it right away. Here you have the action account. You could put another account in like a privileged account in here. You could also update the command in here and then immediately build and deploy it right away again. So in this case, I'm just doing a small change. I'm just looking for the alert text actually. Let's be here. Put arrow in here, so we have the nice comments here like information, warning, or error. And I'm looking for the alert text, which is the display strings. So there it is. So let's say we want to have it given a different name here, and then we can actually run and deploy this again. Right, okay, so and then this builds up. Okay. Okay, and now I think this is important. Actually, we'll see in a moment that the alert that came in there updates. We'll also see that in there. Right. So let's go to the Linux alerts. You can create this yourself a Linux alert view, and the Linux alert view is in here. And yeah, we have the updated alert text right in here. Great. So I'll actually go quite quickly back now to the slides. We've got a bit more things to cover. So if you have questions around what you have seen, feel free to actually put it to the Slack channel. So, and we can address that a bit later. Let me go one more time to that demo system. And actually, when we earlier did this demo here, we actually see now the alert. We wrote this arrow 12 in here. You might remember that. And we have this, let's see, the arrow 12 in here, and that actually is showing right now on here. So we have it in here, that the alert got generated. So just want to show that because I want to tie back a bit to the log monitoring. The script monitoring is pretty straightforward, and there are a lot of things you can do. But when it comes to log monitoring, well, there's some things we want to consider. Okay, Bruce, any questions for now?
Oh, there are. I'm hovering with my finger over the mute button, ready to start. So the first one was, so what version of .NET is the correct one to pick? The default 3.5 or something else?
So 3.5. Well, I'm not. No, actually, it doesn't matter because we don't use the .NET version when building fragments or management packs. So it doesn't matter at all. Only if you build managed modules that using .NET, then it matters. Otherwise, it can be more.
Yeah, and then it would usually depend on what functions of the version of the .NET library that you're using do you actually need. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. There's the one thing, if you're using SCOM 2012 R2 or 2016, then they're shipped with the .NET version. And if you're using a higher, let's say latest and greatest 4.8 or something like that, then 2016 is not, you have to actually install that, which actually is a change to your management group. So you eventually don't want to do that necessarily. So it's one thing also to consider. But it only applies if you develop managed modules in C#.
Right, makes sense. So next one, is it possible to change the settings for the log file monitoring with Fragments instead of using the authoring console?
Settings. Well, yes. Well, the thing is, you can. Well, if I understand the question correctly, you actually do the. Can you read it? So the settings is basically in the monitor. Yes, you can do that. Actually, you can use the fragments. And then after you build a fragment and deploy it, and actually can show that, let's go to that monitor we created in the demo. So we go in here, and then we go actually to that Contoso status monitor, which is back green. And then this one we build actually with the fragments. And now we can actually go in here and change like the properties. You see here, this is the command actually from the fragment. I guess that is the question what was in here. If not, then I need to have the question again.
I believe so. I believe that is the answer to the question. The final one, is it possible to use SCOM runners accounts in Fragments? The Linux admin I'm working with has the box locked down, so when I monitor logs, I need to provide different credentials.
Yes, that's possible. So you actually would need to create your own runners account. Let's just get me to my Visual Studio. There you go. So this is this Visual Studio, and here. So this is actually the runners account. So you can actually define your own ones. There are some caveats you have to be careful because you typically place the runners account in a different management pack than actually where we actually use the runners account because it's to save it the secure reference somewhere, right? So and that's to allow the upgradability. But yeah, it's possible.
Makes sense. And so did you, when creating that runners account, did you create that as part of the fragment, or did you pre-create that and you're referencing something you already created?
This is the default runners account. So if you go into your SCOM environment, you have that runners account is actually in here. So everybody who is sitting in front of a SCOM system can go in here and checks and finds this action account. So that's already here. But you just need to be careful and make sure that actually this profile, this is the profile you're using, actually has reference to that account you set up. So maybe just to make clear again, so there's the account, the run as account, which is in here, and there's the run as profile. So in the MP, we mentioned the profile actually. This is the profile.
Makes sense. Perfect. Then the final question for now, they keep them coming, guys, is it preferred for multi-line scripts to be put a shell script onto Unix host and have the monitor just execute that?
Was that multi-line?
Multi-line scripts.
That's the perfect introduction for the next section.
Brilliant. Couldn't have planned it better.
Yeah, that's like planned, because exactly like when we did look at log monitoring, there are a couple of things we noted there are problems with. So first, interval cannot be changed. You can do everything with SCUM, right? So, but the default, if you don't unseal and take everything apart and put it back together again, the Microsoft out of the box does not have the intention or doesn't expose that as an overridable parameter. And if you do it, you might get in troubles with Cookdown, actually. So the integrated log monitoring, as I call this, is not giving you interval changes. Also, you have to, if you have like the same pattern for multiple files, you just need to create many rules. And that's going to be like a housekeeping thing. Then pattern count, like let's say you have like an arrow and there after another arrow, and you actually want to count, like if you have 2 arrows in a monitoring interval, you want to have an alert. That's also not possible because it will just like pick an alert and fire it. So then the line correlation, let's make correlate 2 different lines is not possible. And this number 5 is exactly the question that was in there. There's no multi-line support. And part of the question was also already the thing with should we rather use a script? Yes, you should. And I'll talk in a moment about how you do that. And next is, it actually doesn't support pattern in file names or directory names, so to recurse through them. So that means like if you have like a date, for example, in the log file name, which is quite common, like every day there's a new file name written, well, you also can't use that integrated log monitoring. And for that, we actually, I actually show like another possibility. It's going to be a bit complex, so we get like more like to the advanced part. So, and just for your information, everything you see on scripts and parts here, I'll provide later the link how you can get this. So this is all information. It's nothing which is we keep secret or so. Like I'll talk about this in a moment. I just talk about the architecture, how to do like cover advanced log monitoring scenarios on Linux. So first, I picked this up. There's a script, and actually this is the script here. So the script of which we're using, and we'll give later the location where you can download it, is the logmp.logmon.pl. It's a Perl script, and you might wonder why Perl. Why Perl? If you're coming from a Linux world, you know that actually Perl is very good in processing strings and characters and so on. So it's really fast. Also with the string comparison, which you need. So it's faster than on the bash side, and bash is always, or like on the shell scripting side, and you don't really want to get into a C or a C++ with that. So Perl is actually a good thing. On any Linux system, you have Perl, so there's nothing you have to install before that. You can actually go and use that. So we actually have a Perl script, and that Perl script actually has some libraries. It has a log file. Let's say, for example, I'm monitoring a log file, and the log file is not there. So what do I do? Like I'm writing an information, say, well, the log file is not there, so actually we can monitor that as well. So, and then we have a configuration file, and we have a pointer file. Obviously, we need to remember the location where we are in the log file. Actually, there's a whole thing you could talk about pointers, because what happens, for example, if you have multi-homing with a pointer, or if you go into a maintenance mode and you come out of maintenance mode, do I get a ton of alerts back? We can all cover that with this script-based scenario. And then we have a shell script that actually prepares the environment and starts it. And we have one additional component, which is a provider, which actually integrates into the agent for performance reasons. So, so we call all these scripts so on like instrumentation. So we've doing this since many years. Well, this is basically how the management packs at NICE are developed, but we're giving this, well, this is downloadable for free. So this is some sets of scripts and compiled binaries for our Linux log file management pack. So, and then we obviously, well, with the, after the instrumentation is there on the script level, we have the logmon configuration, because as you see in the heading here, we call this local log monitoring. And this local log monitoring actually talks a bit about how do we have local pattern to process. And we're really running a bit out of time because we have a full demo for that now. And I'm just going to go ahead to the third use case and actually want to show you a bit of how is multi-line support done, how do we support many files in different patterns. And with this, I think, Nikolai, are you ready for your demo?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Don't worry, don't rush, right? I think we're going to run a bit of time.
I will rush.
Okay, let me actually pass over the role now to you if I find the right spot for doing that. Okay. Thanks,
Yeah.
Bruce, for handling this in the background.
Okay. So. Let's start.
Okay, just a few words. This package here that you see actually, where what is this in there? We give the download location later. So just look at this. You'll get this a bit later after the call. Okay,
yeah.
Now we can go.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a MSI package, and we just need to install it. Of course, I pre-installed it while waiting for my turn, and actually, I installed it on my SCOM test system, but it can be installed on any Windows systems. And the package contains in Linux log file MP folder instrumentation, which just was explained by Christian, with installation file and tar file, which you can always look and see what is inside. So the collector, several scripts. Okay, just a second. And provider. This is C binary, but it's pre-built, and configuration file to integrate it with SCOM agent. And the second subfolder is management packs. Management packs are libraries. So when you import those libraries, you just get some kind of framework. So although there are some predefined rules, but this is for self-monitoring. So if something goes wrong, but so that something should go wrong, first we have to create rules. And it's already imported just to save time. And okay, so let's have a look. We have this library, and we have a nice library management pack. If somebody uses Oracle management pack or DB2 management pack from NICE, then they of course know about NICE library management pack and how to configure it. And here, after you configure it, you actually have the folder NICE IT Management Solutions, and with a new log file MP library, you have an additional log file computers. So how it works for user? So we have Unix Linux computer, which is already discovered or using Microsoft Discovery task. Then what we do, we deploy nice log file instrumentations. So we just run this task, wait until files are delivered on the system, extracted, installed, then we can see the output. Okay, for me, it was already pre-installed, so I just reinstalled the instrumentation, but if it's not there, then it's also fine. Of course, you must be careful with run as profiles, or you should execute this task as root, because Microsoft agent is running as root, and we need to place our library in SCOM agent predefined And then instrumentation is ready, and we can have a look that there are some predefined self-monitoring rules, which checks if everything goes correctly with our OMI provider or with our script. And so you always know if any error happens. We also have some deploy nice log file instrumentation rule, which helps in a big environment to update instrumentation for thousands of systems without interruptions, because of course it's quite handy to execute the task, but okay, where is my task? Okay, but if it's you cannot execute task for more than 50 systems at the same time, I think, all around this. And for 1,000 systems, probably you want to have a rule to do this. After you install instrumentation, we have a discovery, which discover nice library computer. It runs every 4 hours, but we also have a task to speed the thing up and discover the computer almost immediately. It depends, of course, on SCOM. So currently SCOM is searching for discovery on health service on management server. And if it's found, it runs and we have success. After that, that system appears in configuration view, and actually we can see already where all main important directories are executed or exist. For example, in bin directory, where we place the scripts. It's nice bin directory, binary directory, although there are scripts. And data directory, where files can be stored and where log files are located, temp files, and so on. They don't need too much space because if we look at the instrumentation itself, and it's just tar file, so no it's not zipped, not archived, so it just several kilobytes, and log files are always backed up, so they cannot be more than 5 megabytes. So it's just a little bit extension of a SCOM agent. And after that, okay, we can also wait until log file computer discovery finished, or we can execute it manually just to get it immediately and continue with testing or with development. Okay, let's wait just a little bit.
While we're waiting, one question that's a quick one.
No. Okay.
Oh,
it will be quick.
Carry on.
No. Yeah. So, okay. After that, computer appears here, and we can see the log file instrumentation and provider. But then, of course, the question, okay, we have discovered some computers, we have instrumentation, but what next? What to do? And for this, we did the following. We provide in this MSI package also zip file, which contains a Visual Studio project. So let me show this Visual Studio. So this is content of example MP zip file, and here you can just open it with Visual Studio. I am using Visual Studio 2015, so not the latest one, but it works fine for me. And here there are already some examples for configuration, for example, and there are examples for rules with a little bit of explanation. For example, depending on the target, you can use one data source or another data source. For example, here, if you have a target, not a computer, but some applications, and you want to map the alert to that application and have a target, application target, then you can filter and have this rule assigned to each object of that application class. Or if you need to change the time interval and execute the log file monitoring once a day and see, for example, if there are more than 50 errors, then generate an alert, but if it's less, then we can ignore it. then you can also use some data sources. More information about data sources you can see, of course, in nice log file Linux library. And I think since we have a lot of advanced users and gurus, they know how to do this. Simply check XML file and see what data source I used and how they are created, and see what parameters are available in alert and so on. So I'm not staying here. It's some kind of homework to analyze our library management pack after downloading this. Okay, so and of course it will be difficult to deploy a config file manually on 100 systems. So that's why this library management pack also has some write action which deliver configuration file to the system. So what we need is to create configuration file. As I said, there is already an example, and we can already build, and even it's pre-built. So if we open that management pack, we can find in a release folder that MPB already exists. So we can import and test it immediately right now. But for now, for the test, I prepare another probably more difficult case, but it's also interesting to understand. So let me update configuration file. Of course, you can create several configuration files, but then you need to change resources and make some changes in management pack fragments. So here, now what do we have? Component name, I will mention about this later, path. So about path, let me quickly switch to Unix system. I have several Oracle instances on a Linux computer, and I don't want to create 3 different rules for each log file. So that's why I'm using stars in the places where Oracle instance name is used, for example, or mount point is different. And then I want to use this path in my rule to monitor all of these files. Of course, at the end, I want to know from which log file, and for each Oracle instance, I have an issue if it's any. And so here I placed that path with all these patterns. And then I say, okay, let's have a look at this log file more. Okay, so how it looks like, this log file. Oh, it's not one-line log file. We have date, then we have multi-line messages. Okay, but so in this case, I need to define what is the beginning of our blocks. And this can be done here. So let's remember it's 3 characters for month. Then it's a day, 1 or 2, I guess, then time, and then year. Okay, so this is what I specified. It's Perl expression. So we have day, month, 1 or 2 digits, then our minutes, seconds, and then at the end, the year. So each multi-line begins with this pattern. It can be any pattern, depends on your application. I simply took the existing Oracle alert log to create this. Read mode. So usually, of course, we read log files from the last position, but like in the example from Christian, if you want to monitor some status file, then probably you want to read from beginning always, something like this. And I specified 2 conditions. It can be more, but it usually we use 2 conditions, one for errors and one for warnings. And here what I specified is object. So this one came actually from the path. So it's the second pattern. So this is 0 and this is second pattern. And if you remember, it's an Oracle instance name. So I will have an object as Oracle instance name. What I want to see, I want to see all messages which have aura minus and then 4 digits, except because I don't want this, except the two ORA messages 432.1 and 5.432. And all of these ORA messages will be warning, and then I create another condition. Okay, let's call it error, for example, with the same object, because I want to know the Oracle instance name, and a regular expression will be 1.4.3.2.1 or 5.4.3.2. And then it will be error. But I want to have an alert in SCOM only if I have at least two such messages. If it will be just one, this one or this one, it's normal. But if I have two of this or two of this, or one this and one this at the same time, then I want to have an error. Okay, so this is explanation for this example configuration file. And now I want to create my own rule. Okay, let's create a rule for this alert, Oracle alert. So I'm going to add a new empty fragment, although Christian said we shouldn't do this, but I like this. Sorry. Okay, and then let's take one of the rules as an examples. So I will copy them. Okay. And I'm going to replace severity component with Oracle alert. Okay, let's change to Oracle alert. And this Oracle alert actually is the component name. So this is important to map the rule with configuration. So I replace and see what I have now with all these examples. So component name is Oracle alert. I also have component name in the rule ID, so to make it unique, because component name in config file is also unique. And then I have some parameters for my alerts and and some suppressions values. But first, okay, let me remove other ones because I don't want to occupy the system, just to create my own one. Okay. So the task I will leave untouched because it deploys example CFG file on the system. So I will leave it as is. And now I'm going to start and build and deliver on the system. Okay, build started, it's ready, and now it's importing to management group. Christian already mentioned it's very handy because you don't need to copy MPB file to the test system. You can work directly from your development desktop. Okay, it's now there. By default, it's enabled, so we should see soon the result. Target, I set library computer, but if you need to have another target, then of course you will use another target. But then, of course, don't forget about hosts. And about parameters and what parameters means, as I mentioned already, you can have a look in the data source and see, okay, first parameter is component name, condition name, object, file, severity. And you see we already have some suppression rules. So if the same message, or at least similar message came from the log file, it will be suppressed. So only a repeat count parameter will increase. So we don't have 100 messages, which is different just by a date, for example, or some temporary file name. Okay, so we already delivered on the system. Let me go back and see if it's there. Okay, instrumentation. Okay, let's click and see if it's updated. Okay, F5 should work, right? Okay. Okay, log file. No, it's not there yet.
While we're
Okay.
waiting, there's one really quick question to answer here, which is, will this work on AIX environments, or is this only for Linux systems?
So it's, you see in the name, it's just for Linux, but we can do it for Aix, but it's better to ask our solutions team and to discuss this. This free Linux management pack is for Linux.
Makes sense. The other thing I just wanted to say is it's a free MP, and we've put a link to it in the Slack channel. So if you are interested, go and get it there, or just go to nice.de. It's available for download there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, thank you. And okay, we saw it's already here. And what difference? Now we see that additional task appears for this log file computer. So I can deliver this configuration on the system. Okay, it's quite fast because configuration is not too much. And we can quickly have a look at the system. Okay, so let me switch. Okay, where is it? We know that data directory, we saw it, nice library computer is here. By default, it's configurable, but usually default paths are fine here. And let's see what we have here. Oh, sorry. Okay, we have this example file, so we can check. So it was created just several seconds ago. Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, let's take it. Mm-hmm. So, and now let's test it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add some messages to the multi-line messages to the alert log file for Unix, and then we will see how it works and how it looks like. Okay, so what are the paths we have? Okay, let's take this one. Okay, I'm going to add one warning and I'm going to add one error. Okay, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's add it here. Okay, let's have a look what we have here now. So we added one message for warning with 1, 2, 3, 4 regular expression, so or minus 4 digits, and we added one error. Okay, here is important one thing. If you remember our conditions, then there is a count too. So actually, we shouldn't get any errors because we have just one error. So we have this message in a regular expression, but it's just one. So we shouldn't get or error message, but we should have one warning because we have aura 1, 2, 3, 4. And it must be just one message because we exclude 4, 3, 2, 1. So, okay, let's have a look and see what we will have in here in console. So active alerts. Okay, so of course, I didn't change the time interval from 5 minutes, so probably we need to wait just a little bit. So if there are any questions, I can answer it now.
I don't think there are. None that we haven't answered. There's one comment there that's worth sharing, which is advanced Linux monitoring example equals mind blown. Neat example, Nikolai, from Sean.
No, we have, I saw a lot of Oracle systems on Linux, so I think that's makes sense to have such example for application. Yeah.
So maybe two comments from my side still. Like this Linux scripts and what we're showing here is actually in use at many customers with really large environments for like over 4 years, I think now. So we just decided like to make it available for others as well. So this is it's not something we just came up with. So we've been using this for quite a while. So it's quite solid. And it actually touches also on the AIX thing. And I have to, well, Nikolai and I had some discussions, I think, on Friday, right? Should we do it on Friday? Oh, yeah. But the reason why we didn't include it is it's quite easy to also include, but it's more like testing efforts because, yeah, obviously we test everything we ship. So, and this Linux thing is really tested through. And if you AIX, you know AIX, you know that there are some shell commands which behave differently on the AIX side and on the Linux side. So but the Perl script, which is in the core of it, also is ready for AIX. So. And there's one more thing, I think, from one question. So I read the question now in the chat, so I am reading it out. It's about the runners account. So the challenge here, and I'm phrasing this, Bruce, this was the question. So the challenge is that the admin I'm working with has the box is locked down and I can't access the logs. So this is a very common situation. So we know from customers because the application owner locked down the box. So so there are various approaches to that. And it's a bit of negotiation typically because they want the logs to be monitored. Obviously, they need to give access to that, but obviously they want to give only access to what is needed, which is perfectly fair. So.
Okay, so just a little bit comment on what you are talking about. So by default, our registration file says it will be executed as root. So we have access to all log files on the system. If you want to change it, or if your policy said no additional scripts must be run as root, then you can change it to run as a requester. So it looks like this. I'm not going to change it. I just want to show how it looks like. And then it will be run as action account. Requestor. Okay. Then if you run this as ops user, it will be executed as ops user, and then ops user should have access to log files. Otherwise, it will not be monitored.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly.
But by default, we run it as root. Yeah.
Yeah, right. In this case, if you're using, the question was actually before we showed this. So obviously, this is a solution you can use for that use case. Otherwise, you can also use a command which you allow via sudo to read the file. So that's typically the to go via the sudo as configuration, which you can really just define to read from the file and not read anything else. Like, for example, do a read command that you can access that file, or you create a separate group where then you have read permissions to that file. But it's always a bit of a tricky thing. Like they don't want that you read the logs, but you need to monitor the logs. And then, like, how do you read only the logs without doing anything else? So you can also create your own runners account, and you can also go that route. And here we've seen the thing with the requester, and actually the requester is also in the Nicola, if you go back,
yes,
because everybody has this on their Linux system. So if you're on your Linux system, just don't go to root nice, but go to root scx. So you have this directory on your Linux system, and there you have the scx provider rec that you have there. And this is basically exactly the way you have the scx log file on here. And you'll also see the hosting is here as requester. So you could actually basically also run this as a different user than what you have set up. So that is basically used in the standard case, which we did during the very first demo.
Sounds good. So lots of options, basically.
Yeah, I think, okay. So Nikolai, are we done with the demo or something?
So it's another 1 minute until the error message appears. So, okay, so it should be here in a second.
There's one question while we're waiting. What about Solaris-based servers is the question from Pascal.
Oh, okay. Yes, there's somebody with Solaris. Great. I like you. This is good. So we have Solaris servers as well. So same applies as AIX. So the only component which we don't deliver with the package is the provider part. So So yeah, just drop us a mail or so. We can also provide that. But I don't. If you want to do it completely on your own, you still can use a script, and the script is then executed by the class we have just seen, like in the first example. So you can actually use like a script-based approach for that as well. But if you need support for that, like you see, we're getting more requests, Nikolai, I think we need to package that as well then. So at one point.
Take the testing hit. Sounds like the right thing.
So we're only missing HPUX, so then we're complete. That's really last one. So yeah. So okay.
So okay, I think we can stop here. So I will return you a presenter.
I have one wrap-up slide, basically, which actually maybe shows a bit like the comparison of the different options you have. So, so basically, we have actually a third option we didn't talk about yet today, but there is a fluentd possibility, which was introduced with SCOM 1801. So, and then it is still in there. It seems to be disappearing. I'm just wondering if somebody uses it. So if somebody uses that, or would be interesting, you can just drop us something in the chat or in the Slack channel. So I have deployed it once, and especially used if you have the Azure, if you're uploading details to Azure, then this is used. It uses the OMS upload plugin to bring the stuff into the logs, basically into the Azure Log Analytics. But we compare basically those log options. So the first one is here, which I showed in the first demo. The second one is which we have provided here, and the download link is on the Slack channel, or just go to nice.de. And the fluentd is like, it's very capable of doing a lot of things, but there's a big thing here. You have to do local configuration. So you basically have to log into your Linux system to maintain your patterns. So yeah. But I think we've spent quite some time. So with that, I think, Bruce, do you want to find some closing words?
I'm sure I can. So before we kind of wrap up, really, I just wanted to say thank you to both yourself, Christian, and yourself, Nikolai, for taking the time to share today's session with us. I've certainly learned a whole bunch of stuff, and it sounds like from the questions, a whole bunch of people out there have too. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And then just before we end, just to quickly put in a plug for SCOMathon. So our annual SCOMathon conference is coming around again. This year is bigger than ever before. Last year it was just a single day. This year, 2 days of free SCOM conferencing goodness. Registration is now open at scomathon.com. So go check it out. We've been using Fragments from Kevin Holman as a good plug. Kevin will be one of our speakers this year. So and he's going to be talking about, unsurprisingly, custom MP authoring. So do go and check that out. It's free. It's 2 days of great SCOM content, just like this session today. So thank you very much. Next. So all I really had to say was thank you again. Thank you to Christian and Nikolai for presenting, and to all of you for attending. If there are any final questions, we will take them now. And there is one final question in Slack here, which is, I know it's an extra installation requirement on Linux, but have Christian or Nikolai run across any PowerShell Linux monitoring?
Oh, well, Linux. Well, there are different approaches to that. Obviously, you can run PowerShell on Linux, which is quite new. And I think, Nikolai, we haven't done that really, PowerShell on Linux.
Because it's an additional, I think, installation, so it's not out of the box. But yeah, we know that PowerShell can run. And I even tried to run some scripts, but just for curiosity, so I didn't investigate this deeper.
So what we're doing is, and this is going, it's where we go actually, where many things goes, is with .NET Core. So .NET 5 basically is obviously independent of Windows and Linux. It runs on both. So and there will be more in that area. Like latest when we get a .NET 5 SCOM agent for Linux. Can put that in place.
Makes sense. I'm sure it will open up a whole world of possibilities for those who are familiar with PowerShell, basically in the Linux world. I don't see any other questions. So if there are any other questions that spring to mind after this session, you can always put them in the Slack channel and we'll be able to get back to you when we see them. So thank you very much for attending. And thank you again, Christian and Nikolai, for this session. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Bye.
Thank you. And see everyone at SCOMathon. Thanks all. Goodbye.